for the area that he wants to include in a subdivision plat. And with this item, this will be, he's requesting a commercial one that will allow for different potential uses that he's considering, including a car wash, a restaurant, and a convenience store at this intersection. And I believe I heard you say abandonment. Yes, TxDOT abandoned that portion of right of way that is close to that intersection. With that, the future land use map has this area as a commercial corridor, and that zoning is consistent with that future land use designation. There were no letters received from adjacent property owners within 200 feet of that property. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this at their meeting on the 18th and recommended approval of the zoning change. I will be happy to answer any questions that you have, and I don't see an applicant in the audience. So I will be happy to address any questions. Thank you.
All right. This being a public hearing, we will close the deliberation and open the floor. If anyone wishes to speak in favor or against this item, you may do so. There being no public comments, we will close the floor and reconvene to consider this item.
My only comment is I don't know who controls that section of Avenue O, but if we can just get forewarning and signage up before it's shuttered off to prevent some.
It is being planned that we talked to the applicant about that, putting up some notices before they actually close that roadway.
No, I'm sorry. We've closed the public comments. So yeah, sorry. Comments or question? Not, the chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as is.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 12 as presented. Any other comments before vote? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Item 13, lucky 13, hold a public hearing and consider zoning change from Plan Development 30 with an SUP, specific use permit for used car sales, drive-in, restaurant, and retail zoning, to amended Plan Development Retail with a specific use permit for an automatic car wash on approximately 1.6 acres located at 111 Sparta Road. It's more.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This proposal is from Whitewater Express Car Wash. For this property, there is a residential adjacency in the back. There's Greenbrier Road that has residential dwellings. The applicant is aware that they're going to have to make some concessions for that, a buffer along that. Here's a proposed site plan of what the applicant is planning. Access for the site will be from, this highlighter. This unnamed city roadway will provide access to the site. As you can see at the rear of the property is where the lining of the vehicles will be. So trying to get away from the traffic at the interchange of Main and Sparta Road. Cars will go into the car wash and exit and go into the vacuum station on the north side. Because of that residential adjacency, the applicant placed the loudest producing sound on the north side of the property to provide some separation for the residential property owners. For this, the building is going to be over 4,000 square feet. There are 27 vacuum areas and 5 employee parking spaces on the south side of the building. Landscaping is going to be mostly along the Sparta Road intersection around the building, and the applicant has agreed to place some tall hedges along the fence line at the rear of the property. Per the city, the plan and zoning recommendation, they are recommending an 8-foot tall masonry fence at the rear of that property as well. Plan Development 30 had some material requirements as part of that. So 50% of the building has to be a masonry product, and the applicant is shown that. The entrance to the car wash will be a metal mesh type material. This is an SUP. So some of the considerations are compatibility with the surrounding uses. And again, I've kind of explained that with the site plan, looking at the placement of where the vacuum cleaners are going to be, the placement of the vehicles to help out with that. Appropriateness of activities, their hours of operations are 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. So that's consistent with other typical businesses in that area. Reasonableness of use, we thought this is a retail area and this seems like a reasonable use. Mitigation for impact, the applicant has made some concessions during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Some of the complaints were about the fencing, which was addressed. There was also complaints about the lighting. The applicant was agreeable to turning off the lights after hours of operation. So lights will only be on between the hours that they are operating from 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. For the future land use map, this shows this as a commercial retail area, and this complies with that to use. For property owner notification, we did receive a couple of letters. Actually, one letter is in opposition, and then there were two neighbors that spoke during the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And they spoke in opposition of the zoning change. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval. And again, their requirements, in addition to our typical language for the retail type use, a subdivision plat and construction plans are required. They required an 8-foot tall masonry fence along the edge with solid hedges, a minimum of 6 feet in height at the time of planting. And also the exterior lights must be turned off after hours of operation between 7:30 a.m. and no later than 8 p.m. With that, to applicants, there's a couple of representatives here. So if you have any questions for them, I'm sure one of them will be able to answer that question. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you for the detailed explanation. Helps us a lot. This being a public hearing, we will close the council deliberations, open the floor. I have two individuals that have signed up. Again, I'll go alphabetical order. And also anyone else who did not sign up will have an opportunity. So the first one I have alphabetical by first name is Greg Murray. And then after that will be Will Morris.
Greg Murray, 106 Vintage Park Boulevard, Houston, Texas. I am the VP of Real Estate for Whitewater Express Car Wash, and I'm available for any questions. If you have anything technical about the operation or how we integrate into the community, I'm here for that.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Will Morris, if you wish to speak. You're okay? Okay. Thank you, Will. All right. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or in opposition to this item?
Good evening. My name is Drew Donosky, 1903 Central Drive, Bedford, Texas. I'm the engineer of record. Happy to answer any questions technical about the layout, the site plan, again, the operations. We're here to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Clay Bailey again, just a question not for or against, but as we consider the water strengths for the future, does something like this have a large impact on the water use that we have now? And is there a recyclable option or anything like that? Thanks.
I'd be happy to answer that question, but
please do.
we have a full reclaimed water system. So the car wash itself operates on a 2-inch water meter, which is no different than any fast food restaurant or retail building. It doesn't demand any additional water beyond a normal retail or commercial use.
Okay.
Beyond that, the used water or the recycled water goes through a series of sand traps, filters out the material, reuses the clean water, and then those are disposed of privately.
Okay. All right, thank you. Does staff want to speak about drought conditions?
Yeah, I'll chime in there, Mayor. I shared this with P&Z also, and these folks will be aware. We obviously, from the drought perspective, we control that from a city perspective, the types of businesses that use water like that. And so currently, car washes do feature in our drought plan at stage 4. We've talked about continually revisiting that each year. And so there may be a desire as we move forward to amend that. But ultimately during drought, if we feel that we've entered a stage where we need to conserve water, car washes are asked to comply and shut down. It's probably happened a handful of times in the past 5 years. Every time they've been very compliant, no issues. They take the phone call. This is their business operation. They get it all over the state, and they'll shut it off. So there is that ability for staff to ensure that critical water supply is being preserved in times of real need.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the floor? There being none, we will close the public hearing and we will reconvene and discuss and make a motion regarding this item. What say you?
I'm concerned about traffic volume in and out, lighting, which has been addressed a little bit, but then also noise volume. Really concerned about potential traffic flow and entrance and exit from the facility, the high volume car item, and just Main Street has become a overburdened, and traffic there just continues to enhance Sparta, and the intersection is concerned. And just thinking for long-term best use for the community of the property.
Do you have a picture, a broader picture to show kind of where the traffic flow is in relation to the entrance and exit from Walmart and Main Street?
I'm hoping this will work. So here's that intersection of Main Street. Here's an entrance to Walmart, which aligns to this entrance of that city roadway. There was an
So
additional.
it showed a entrance exit
All of them.
next.
Yeah, there's a random map in our packet. I don't know if it applies or not.
And I was also going to mention, there is an entrance that the applicant is closing off on the western side of the property where the ATM is, that current access. They're closing off that one.
It looked like their car wash, yeah, on your layout, looked like the vacuum cleaner portion had options for east and west entrance and exit.
No, that western side is closed off. It's just on the eastern side, that's where the entrance is. And also they have an access agreement with adjacent properties, including Take 5 and that nail salon at the corner.
And so coming out to turn left, right there.
There's, I believe, only right and left turn at that Take 5 entrance. At the Main Street, that it does allow for both ways, left or right, that intersection.
But Main Street would be right turn only leaving.
Right turn
3.5.
only leaving out of Take 5,
But if they go back out on Sparta, they can turn left or right, either one.
correct.
Well, turn it left.
If so, well, if coming north out of that property onto Sparta and turning left creates a traffic problem, do we have the option later to make that a right turn only exit onto Sparta?
I'm gonna leave that to Public Works.
Yeah, short answer to that, Dave, is yes.
Because that would be our road, right?
That
Correct,
is our
as
road.
far as our road, yeah. And it is a right turn only onto Main from Take 5.
And there is cross access, so they can go through the nail place. Can they get over to the exit there next to the, you said Take 5, the oil change?
Correct,
So you could wayfind and take a right there.
correct.
You can't take a left, but you could take a right out. Okay.
Only right out.
This used to be a Sonic, right?
It was a Tasty Breeze or something like that.
Like a
back in
Sonic,
there.
a lot of traffic,
Yeah.
a lot of traffic then too.
Then that for
Our
storms.
Yeah, storms.
I think that
I know.
the P and Z process did a good job of helping with the screening between this property and the residential stuff to the south. With the fence and the shrubs and even the lights that you mentioned. There's always a tension whenever you have retail type uses that are adjacent to residential uses. Obviously, this neighborhood was developed decades ago, and I think that the city does a good job now in planning to try to anticipate some of this stuff and add some transition zones, is something we talk about a lot now. Certainly I wish that we had a little bit more buffer here, but the nature of Sparta Road is retail and commercial in nature. And it's hard to, if it's not going to be a car wash, it's going to be something else commercial that is going to be tough for backing up to residential. I think at the end of the day, this is as good a fit as any for something along Sparta there in that retail corridor.
I agree with Dave. I want to give props to the engineer and the planners on this for putting the waiting lane against the residence fence and then the building. And then the vacuums on the other side of the building, just for more of a barrier. A lot of times stuff will get to us and we'll ask if they can flip it and we're kind of too late in the game, but excellent job here I think on the site design. And I agree with Dave. It's kind of it's a fine balance, and I think they've done as good a job as anybody can ask them to do for it. So
Setback on the rear and side, setback requirements. It's
20.
awful close.
It's 20. They're exceeding that with the just.
For the structure.
Land.
Yeah, structure, not parking. A lot of activity. Yeah.
does the entrance structure, like I'll call it the toll booth, does that structure count as a setback or no?
It does not. Only the building has a setback, not the parking or the circulation.
Any other comments or questions?
In the lull, I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this SUP for the car wash as presented. Any other comments or questions before we vote? I'll make my comment. My parents moved to town and our house was 204 Montrose. So the north side of Belton. They just Montrose and Greenbrier were new subdivisions. There was a horse field where now Sitcog is located. There was a big pond where now Turtle Creek Apartments were. And there was a small white house on the north side, about where Sparta Road is, and a big field there. And so everything was just like horses and cows. That whole area. There was no Sparta. And then it was a small lane to get back to the lake, and it was houses all up and down Main with chain link or hurricane fences and same. Yeah, or no fence. Yeah. So anyway, so I do understand the concern of those. That was 40 plus years ago, and we've seen a lot of changes. And now Lake Road is primarily commercial, and Sparta Road is now primarily commercial. And so I appreciate the developers understanding that we do have some legacy subdivisions that are also in transition. I would expect that's kind of the front end of those. As they already did it on Montrose, but I'm sure on Greenbrier, somebody will probably buy those homes and turn that to commercial at some point. So we understand neighborhoods in transition are hard. It's hard to navigate. And so again, appreciate everyone's comments. And I do agree. I think turning left out of there is going to be a non-starter for 2 hours a day. You're just not going to turn left. You're going to have to turn right on Main Street and find another way to get where you need to go. So with that being said, we'll now entertain a vote. So all in favor, we already have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
All right, so we have 5-2 split vote. All right. All right, that's item 13. Item 14, hold a public hearing and consider. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Hold a public hearing and consider the repeal of ordinance 2025-14 and a zoning change from retail to retail with an SUP for a package store located at 2150 North Main Street for proposed Longhorn Liquor as submitted by the applicant OPIT LLC, DBA Longhorn Liquor. Seems like we talked about this one last time.
Yeah, a little bit of deja vu. What happened is the applicant and the landlord got the location a little incorrect. The furniture store is not moving out of their location, and the
They're not going to
applicant.
sell liquor.
No, they're not gonna. do it.
Champagne while you're.
Sorry, can't lay in a lazy couches.
Lazy chair
chair
and
and-
Jack.
I'm like-
Totally kidding.
So this is actually going into a vacant store on the north side of that furniture store. So this is a correction. All of the notices have been sent out again to all the adjacent property owners to let them know what is going on. But this also includes the repealing of the furniture store location so that there's only one liquor store approved in this area. As stated before, there's plenty of parking spaces. There's plenty of exterior lighting, and there's a traffic light for circulation out of this shopping plaza, which is my favorite part. Other than that, we received one letter of support. No mitigations. There's nothing within 300 feet of the property. It meets with the future land use map requirements. And the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this item at their meeting on the 18th. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have. And also the applicant, Mr. Dennis is here, and I can't remember your last name at the moment. Should you have any questions for him?
Well, welcome back. We will close the deliberations. We will open the floor for any comments, pro or con regarding this development. There being no comments from the floor, we'll reconvene the council Chair would entertain a motion.
Hope the incorrect address wasn't our error, but I move to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this again next door and repeal at the same time. Any other comments or questions before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Sorry for the long drive, but we got it done. All right. X marks the spot. Item 15, hold a public hearing and consider zoning changes related to the Imagine Belton standards. A zoning change from Central Business District, Light Industrial, Retail, Commercial 1, various specific use permits, and various planned development districts to the Central Downtown Zone, generally located west of IH 35, north and east of Nolan Creek, and south of 2nd Avenue. And item B is zoning change from light industrial, retail, multifamily, commercial 1 and 2, single family 1, 2, and 3, neighborhood services, office 1, various SUPs, and various planned development districts to the Uptown Zone, generally located between Shine Street and I-35, north of 2nd Avenue and south of 9th. All right, Bob.
Thank you, sir. And good evening. I'll just take a few moments to go through this project with you. And the purpose of this item is to conduct a public hearing and to consider rezoning the areas in the uptown and the central downtown areas. When the city adopted the Imagine Belton standards, the ordinance included these items. The second step is where we're at right now, to begin the process to rezone the property within the Imagine Belton area. First, the uptown zone, and then the central downtown zones. As you know, there's 5 zones. And so we're starting with these 2, and we'll rezone the rest of them later. This is the geography that we're talking about. The pink is the uptown zone, which extends north of 2nd up to past 6th and west across Main Street. And then the central downtown zone is south of 2nd down to the river, just across the Main Street area. And I wanted to take a quick or a short moment to talk a little bit about grandfathering or non-conforming uses, because when we rezone property, there's invariably going to be some non-conforming uses or grandfathering in these areas. And just a quick definition, non-conforming uses or grandfathering is a piece of property that is currently allowable in the zoning area, but when the zoning changes, it may not be allowable anymore. And so the bottom line is if the use continues on without any changes, whether it's a change of occupancy or an expansion of the use, and the new code in this area allows for a 10% expansion, a physical expansion, then the grandfather is protected. So we have that clearly articulated in the code. And hopefully that makes sense to y'all. This evening is set aside to conduct a public hearing. We do recommend that you approve the ordinance that'll change the zoning of this property from to the uptown and the central downtown area. The Planning and Zoning Commission met on the 18th. They also held the public hearing, and they've recommended they forwarded a recommendation to y'all to approve the rezoning of this area. So I will step back, Mayor, and let you do your thing, and then I can answer any questions that y'all may have. Thank you.
All right, so we will make sure this was item A and B, or that was just A?
A and B.
That's A and
do
B.
them together.
Okay, I just want to, I just want to make sure. So I don't keep it all. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll do that. But for the public hearing, this will be for both A and B. All right. So we will stop our deliberation and we will open the floor. We've already had one comment generally about this. Any other person wants to speak in favor or against this item, they're welcome to do so. 3-minute time. All right, name and address for the record one more time.
Yeah, Clint Bailey, 445 Bella Rose. Hey, so I've done a lot of time in the neighborhoods, particular in this region. Met a lot of people that's for it, and I met a lot of people that's against it. One of the recurring themes, the questions they ask me is, as these zonings change, how is that going to affect our property tax? And then if the zoning is forced, I say in quotation, on those residents, is there any plan in the future to provide any sort of property tax relief? They're like, yeah, I lived here a long time. The city's changing it. But that's one of the big issues for and against. So I just want to relay that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We'll probably address that when we debate the item. All right, Cynthia.
I'll be brief. Cynthia Hernandez in Belton Economic Development Corporation. We're housed at 412 East Central Avenue. And quick comment of appreciation for the city's efforts of implementing Imagine zoning. Imagine Belton. I know the rezoning is a big undertaking, but it takes this area that's comprised of like 15 different zones, and it streamlines the process. And it makes it very clear on what the intended uses or allowable uses are within the zones. Furthermore, just a comment to state that the intent of Imagine Belton is not for immediate development to bulldoze neighborhoods or anything like that. This is just preparing Belton for the growth that we're seeing. And as the market starts to support this type of development, it just positions the city and clearly states what's allowable in certain areas of Belton. So thank you for your support. And as we are housed in the downtown district, we are supportive of the rezoning.
Thank you, Cynthia. Any other comments for or against this item? Always heard lean into the awkward pause because there's always that. All right, so awkward pause was long enough. All right, we will close the floor and we will consider these two items separately, but from a discussion standpoint, open a discussion for both, and then we can go and make the motions individually. So does council have any comments or questions, any statements that they would like to make? Or the chair would entertain a motion.
Bob, any discussion or insight into a change in appraised value or taxation from a zoning change?
Short answer is zoning does not affect tax values.
Yeah.
Slightly longer, more nuanced, there's many variables that go into that equation. And, you know, it's usually the use of the property, the age of the structure, et cetera, all these things. But zoning does not affect the tax value of the property.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Should a citizen be concerned over the zoning change?
No, sir.
Would it impact them in their ability to live in their home, or any changes to their residence, or any concern whatsoever over this zoning change?
No, sir, they should not, and they won't, primarily because of that concept, that legal concept of grandfathering that protects them through this whole process.
How many Saturday meetings do we have, Bob? Couple? Weren't there some
least.
Saturday and evening meetings?
I don't know. Well, certainly evening meetings, we certainly did. We had probably 8 or 9 meetings that led up to the adoption of the standards.
And I think this is almost year 2 of this process that we've been working on.
It's
Is that
been
right? Yeah.
debated at the planning and zoning and sent back, I think, a couple of times. So
Yeah.
And economic development's input quite a bit. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
it's, nothing that's happened
and
overnight.
several subcommittees as well have reviewed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have encouraged involvement and participation. We aren't trying to force anything on anybody. We don't want to impact anybody's ability to live in their home or impact their taxable value. We want to try to plan long-term for growth, especially in neighborhoods that may be attractive 5, 10, 15 years out. Make the zoning process and planning process easy for development and have specific uses in certain areas. Correct? My understanding.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And I think it's important to note that within the Imagine Belton plan and zoning, there are specific uses for residential.
Yes.
So those are protected in a way. in the plan and in the zoning itself. And one of the problems that we have now is you've got this sort of polka dot version of spot zoning where when something comes up and we look at it and we go, well, I guess that's reasonable, you know, but it's right in between two incompatible zone properties, but we think, well, maybe this is going next. And this creates a vision and a plan and a path forward for development as it occurs, while also protecting the existing use of the properties that we have.
That also had significant community input as it moved forward. So I just a couple of quick comments. This has been a long time in the process, and I too have been around here for a really, really long time, going on 25 years in community development in Belton. And if you don't plan well, your community gets out of hand. And that's exactly what's happened all of these years. We're standing on the shoulders of a lot of great planners, in my opinion, to have kept Belton the town that it is today. And if we don't continue on with that planning in a well thought out and visionary manner, we're going to lose control of what makes it special. So I'm grateful for the process. I'm grateful for the input that we've received from so many community members as we were brought this to us and how we move forward with it. And I'll make a motion that we approve item A of 15 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the zoning change for the Central Business District as presented. Any other comments or questions before we vote?
Bob, does this prevent anyone from debating or contesting their taxes with the tax assessor?
No, sir, it does not.
Good, thank you.
I'll try to answer a few of the questions that were posed and statements that were made from the floor during public comments. I think number one, when it comes to, I think the phrase was government overreach on how we're stepping beyond. That one of the things that cities do is they have to work with the property owners to have a plan. So you know that when you build a house, that your house can be a house and you're not going to be next door to something else. And so that is planned. If you look at the pictures of downtown Belton from the 1800s, you had smelting plants and you had tanneries and you had horseshoeing and you had all this stuff, like all where now we have residences or buildings or businesses. So I think that one of the things that this does is it recognizes that we've got a centuries old city and we're in a centuries old buildings. Like, so we're from the 1800s, we've got buildings in this area, and it allows people to do things by right. That means they can do these list of things by right. They don't have to go to the government and ask for permission. So if you want to have a house and then you decide I'm going to prepare taxes and have a business there, you don't have to go in and get a zoning change anymore. If you want to then, sell it and they want to do a bed and breakfast, they can now do that there in these areas because it allows this list of things. And it really helps people plan as they buy into an area that these are things that we can do by right, and it makes it easier. So I think it's the opposite. I guess we could probably claim it leads to maybe a little anarchy because now you have a lot more freedom, but it's freedom within a boundary. And we've had, I think, probably more than 100 individuals that have been like invited into the process. So they're either a member of a subcommittee, they're on staff, they're on council, they're on planning and zoning, whatever, they're in the Chamber of Commerce, they're on Belton Economic Development Corporation. We've had tons of people specifically asked, and we've modified the plan from the beginning to this. So I think that's one, is I think that from a government standpoint, we're really trying to work with that. The second one is, what can we do to alleviate taxes? I think people are very concerned about the increased appraisal, especially on Shine Street. You can look, I looked up your property. I was able to see what the property tax is difference from year to year. So just because you brought that up. For the city of Belton, it went up, I think last year, like $150. I think it was flat for 2 or 3 years. It had gone up maybe $100 the year before. It was flat for 2 or 3 years. So the city of Belton, which is one component of your tax bill, it's not the whole thing. The biggest concern is appraised values have gone through the roof. My house doubled. They tried to double my appraised value on my home because I've been able to successfully appeal it. And so I was able to appeal it again. So I would suggest anyone who owns a home, don't just to take appraiser for what they say. I had a structure in the academy that was appraised at 400. sold it for 250. They don't give me a refund because they were wrong. I have to pay for it. And so again, I think we see the pressure. And how do you get the tax burden off of the homeowner? And the way we've done it over the last 25 years plus, and it's been hard work, there was no retail or commercial really in Belton. All of downtown Belton were like,
Bail
bonds and money stuff and whatever, or empty buildings. And now what happens is we've seen our sales tax revenue increase significantly. We've seen that the burden of ad valorem is now being shared with companies like Walmart or car wash, right? These things are now contributing. And so it's less burden on the individual property owner. So we've actually seen the percentage share of the ad valorem tax base go away from rooftops and towards other entities, which has been good. And so I think we're trying to continue to do that measured plan growth. We have currently the lowest municipal tax rate in our region. Because this team is very conservative. We all live here. We have to pay taxes and we get $1 a year. So if we can do things to help influence that, we have. And so, I just wanted to answer some of those questions that were brought up. If you guys have any more questions, you're welcome to talk to staff or us afterwards. This is going to be a process. Zoning changes happen. We look at ordinances. And so we may not get it right. We may get 90% there, 80% there, but that's why we elect people to sit here, because if it's gone too far, then you elect new people and you go back a different direction. But right now, this has been very much a grassroots effort. It's not been a staff directed effort. This has been something that was really brought forward by some members of our, I think, Economic Development Corporation was the one who brought it. It's like, hey, this is a way that we can do it. So
citizens within the economic.
Absolutely.
economic
Yeah, not
development.
staff. It was
Right,
citizens.
right.
Yeah, these were commission manager.
I'd add to and echo David's point too. I always like the fun fact, our neighbors across the river, 1 cent in their tax value brings in 750,000 plus in revenue, whereas 1 cent on our tax roll is maybe 180,000.
It used to be 30,000.
Yeah, it used to be way
It
less.
is.
And
I
so,
remember.
to his point, that commercial development, this is something that adds to that mix. And then two, I feel you, man. I don't own any other businesses. I own one home. My wife and I have 2 incomes. I get it. I encourage you to reach out, join a board with us, help us be that input for people that live near you and like you. And I always encourage that volunteerism is where it begins. And then who knows, might be up here one day. So
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. Could I don't want to make a comment.
find us after. Find us
Yeah,
after.
we'll talk afterwards. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. All right. We already have a motion and a second for item A. Any last discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. And item B is the zoning change from light industrial and all those others and various planning to the uptown zone. So again, the zoning change for uptown zone.
Move to approve 15B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for 15B, which is the uptown zone. Any other comments or questions on this side? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, passes unanimously. All right, item 16, last public hearing is hold a public hearing and consider resolution adopting an amendment to the 2030 comprehensive plan related to the updated future land use map plan for the city of Belton. All right, Bob, part 2.
Thank you very much. Before I dive into this one, I just want to say thank you to Travis and the Covey team who helped us through this process, both on the long range plan for the plan itself and then through this rezoning activity. They've been with us the whole way and they'll continue to be with us as we implement the standards. I don't think they're
Thank you,
with
Bob.
us this evening, but I wanted to.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate that.
Travis, good to hear you. I was afraid you might not have got the problem there. Okay.
No,
good.
it's working.
The second what Bob just said, because they were at the very inception of all this planning, and we've had lots of citizen input since that time, but we had some great professional input from Covey and Associates. Travis and his group were just great to work with and bringing that to BEDC, and then eventually through the long process of having all the citizen input. So I want to give them credit from the get-go.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. We love Belton and can't wait to see where it leads and maintain its awesome charm. I think it's really what we want to do. The history, the culture, everything like that is really important to us. So Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, let's talk about the future land use plan update. I'll take a few moments to just go through this project with you again. You know, you've seen this on a couple of occasions. But again, the purpose of this item is to conduct a public hearing on the update of the plan and the associated policy statements. So the goals of the update are to increase the flexibility and guidance for the decision makers in our community when we make land use decisions, especially during the rezoning process. And that's most of the time where you will intersect with the future land use plan. It avoids land use decisions being made in isolation. This plan does. It helps implement the strategic plan that you guys update on an annual basis. It helps with that and other plans that we have in the community, whether it's utilities or other land use based plans like parks and recreation, things like that. It addresses the need for housing and housing protection. And we also talked about the addition of industrial properties on the map because that was not really represented in the current plan. And it provides a more user-friendly interface for the development community, for the public, and for city staff. And I'll talk about that some more in a minute. So let's start with the plan itself. There's numerous components to the plan. It's the map and then the policy statements, as y'all will see. So we have the map there. It's a little bit different than what we may have seen before. The key thing on this map is, and it may or may not mean anything to you, that it's GIS based, which means Geographic Information System. It's electronic, it's changeable, it's updatable, and all that kind of stuff, and can be republished when appropriate. And that's good for us because we will keep up with this as land uses come before you and those changes are made. We can analyze data on a parcel level, and the current plan is more bubble map, and that has its strengths and weaknesses, but we run more into the weaknesses than we do the strengths, primarily because we like to zoom down on a piece of property and let you know where that is. It talks about, it includes the city infrastructure as an embedded layer, and of course it includes areas that are industrial for use. And we're also introducing a few new land use categories, which are mixed use 1 and mixed use 2. They're the green and darker green there. And the mixed use 1 is slightly more densely designed than mixed use 2, which is more commercial 1, 2, and light industrial. All right. We move on. So the first policy statement that I'll talk about is the primary and secondary land use categories. We wanted to introduce that concept to you so that there will be a way to focus on the primary desired land use. And then there's also a secondary land use that is kind of baked into the decision-making process. So for instance, if it were a office use type area on the future land use plan and they wanted to do retail, then would there be that kind of, we know it ahead of time that it would fit. We just need to get approval to do that kind of thing. And this also ties into later sections in the plan that talk about the infill criteria and the transition zones, which protects or establishes policies that address the adjacency of different types of land uses. Okay, and this just kind of shows, I just want to kind of like on the mechanics of it just very quickly. For instance, on office use, for instance, I'm going to circle that right there. It's office and these type of work environments. But the secondary use is mixed use 2, which is commercial and industrial and institutional. That's an example of how we've structured it. So each land use has a subset of things that will go along with the major land use. So I believe that will provide some flexibility and predictability in the development process. When we talk about this section here, this is infill development. We wanted to have a section that also ties in with the transition area that you may have read about in the plan. And this area talks about infill in neighborhoods that are filling out in certain areas. You may have some vacant lots that experience that may be mostly residential or mostly something. And they may attract retail or some other kind of commercial use or vice versa. And so when we have that particular situation, the policies in the plan, I'll talk about an alternative compatibility use application where we look to the policies that we'll talk about here in a second. And we say, okay, how are you protecting what's there today? And this also deals with the residential neighborhoods and things like that. And this particular application, the alternative compatibility use application, is sent through the decision-making process. It'll come to planning and zoning and then ultimately to the city council. So you have a way to look at how they're protecting the neighborhoods. And the plan that we have here provides some guidance in there, and that'll be a beginning point for the P&Z and the council. Okay, the next thing is the light industrial component or the industrial component. This is important, because we're actually setting aside property on the future land use plan that are dedicated to industrial uses. But it also provides some policy statements in terms of some aesthetic criteria. Let me explain that. For instance, they may talk about the height and the depth and the massing of the buildings and things like that. So you're not looking at big, big boxes that kind of look the same and everything like that. We want to make sure that every land use in that community has some design component to it that makes it attractive and compatible with the adjacent properties, if it's even appropriate in that particular case. Okay, so that's the industrial areas. So in the other point of this thing is the transition zones, which I talked about when we were speaking about the infill component. So we'll have some criteria here, and I'll give some examples between residential, multifamily, residential, non-residential, industrial to commercial and things like that. And so you'll see things like, let's see, let me circle this just very quickly. I won't waste a lot of your time, which I'm about to do anyway. So we have these component items. All right, let me do it like this. Does that work? Nope. Do you see this? Nope. Laser pointer. There we go, right here, right here. Does that look right here? All right, right in the middle of the screen, we got these thing called, and you've probably seen it in the file, compatibility buffer and enhanced edges. And so depending on the intensity of the land use will depend on whether we talk about the compatibility buffer, which could be anything from walls to planting to setbacks to all kinds of different things, okay? And then the enhanced edge is more of a softer edge between residential, non-residential, things like that. So we identify these options so that when we do this compatibility application, we know what we're, not we, but the applicant knows what they're faced with. And that's all about that transparency, that predictability, and that kind of thing. Very big deal in terms of dealing with the development community. Okay, I think almost the last thing I wanted to talk about is that we added this component into the plan, and that's, dealing with the residential area parking challenges. And we use this area off of Layla Lane as an example. And here I'll take a moment to say thank you to Brent and his team for helping us kind of step through this whole process. But they came up with several options to begin with, not as solutions, but to begin with, is to say, okay, well, if we have these parking problems and you use this as kind of like the, kind of ground zero, if you want to call it that, but gives us option to consider as we look at, and this is a future work item that comes out of the plan to say, we have challenges with parking. We need to look at residential parking ratios. And so through the thinking process, and I think we've touched on this before with y'all, is that there's several options that they talked about, head-in parking with garages and tree islands. Let's see, option 2 is something a little different, head-in parking with no garages with street trees and parallel parking on the street and all this kind of stuff. So what we will do is use this as a beginning point. We'll analyze and compare and think and come up with some solutions that deal with residential parking issues, and we'll bring something to you. This is the springboard item that kind of kicks it all off. So there's not much policy here other than to say, let's get this problem solved. After the public hearing that we had on the 18th, we did have some feedback from the EDC in terms of land use. I'm kind of reluctant to use that pointer, but I got to. Oh, I know. Matt showed me this. Let's start here. And so this is the way it is today. And so I gotta, well, I don't know if they're looking that way. But so this is what we're going to change it to. It'll be a mixed use 2 instead of the industrial, primarily because of the topography. And so, okay, we're okay with that. And this is great. Look at that. And this area that the EDC is considering or is in the process of purchasing, down on Amity Road, west of 35. We originally had slated it as residential. They asked that we consider making it more of an industrial use. So we slated it as the MU2, which is the mixed use 2, which includes the commercial 1 and 2, and then light industrial. I know there's been some other conversations about maybe just turning that into purple, industrial, that kind of thing.
Bob, I think EDC was hoping that would be labeled purple or industrial use.
That's great.
On Amity Road.
And this is the time to do it. Perfect. Exactly. All right. So I'm very grateful for the zoom in feature. And so the last slide, we did take this to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They recommended approval after the public hearing, and Mayor, I'll step back and we can have the public hearing and we can talk about it some more after that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bob. All right, I'll just say this for those in the audience who've not seen a future land use map. This is an idea of the future. The fact is, especially in areas of transition, it rarely goes exactly like we thought it would, but it's generally in the neighborhood. So this is not a rezoning of the whole area. It's just a guidance to allow for us to work with staff to get a general idea. So when people come and knock on the door and they look at where the road is, they can at least know generally this is what the council and the citizens expect. And then that starts the process. So I just wanted to say that before we open the public hearing. We will stop our deliberations, open the floor. If anyone wishes to speak in favor or against this future land use map and plan, now is the time to do so. Well, there being no comments from the floor, we will close the floor and reconvene, and now's the time to discuss or adopt the resolution.
So glad Stephanie has her day. Future land use.
I know. Oh, well, I was not going to jump right in, but I'll go ahead.
Great tool, great guideline. Excited about buffer and transition areas. And also would like to see the change out Amity Road for that to be more industrial. Is what the EDC had planned for that.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think to that point, I was beginning my volunteerism in Belton whenever the first future land use map was developed. And as great as it was immediately outdated. As soon as we adopted it, because Belton continued to grow. And then we were having to work with a PDF to say, well, I know that's what this is, but we already know there's something else going on there. So everybody just kind of understand that that's different now. And so with a flip of a switch, we can change what's happening based on development as it occurs. And it's a interactive, engaging map that we can adjust as we move forward. I think it's fantastic.
That was kind of my thought. What is the trigger for going through this entire process again? Or do you guys have as staff some leeway to kind of, it's transformative as you go, tweak it?
If we have a zoning case, for instance, that is inconsistent with the future land use plan, but y'all agree that it's a good thing for the town, then we change the future land use map at the same time as we do the zoning. So it keeps up with things. And that's something we were not able to do before.
So with this, is our full comprehensive plan up to date? Take a picture quick. Or it will change tomorrow? Isn't that the case?
certainly are able to do that. Remember a
Yeah.
month or so ago, you had a request for somebody who had a zoning change.
Right.
And wanted to come back and
Exactly.
amend the land use plan to be consistent with that. And so we kind of did it backwards that time.
Right.
Now we'll be in a position to do it consistently as we go through a rezoning request. Keep in mind also that every time we bring a rezoning to you, as Tina comes up, she'll talk about the comprehensive plan reference. That's the base for your consideration for rezoning. In fact, legally, zoning doesn't operate in a vacuum. You have to have a comprehensive plan to rezone a piece of property or to zone a piece of property. So that's the basis for it. It has that framework and basis. So really important. The digital component makes it ability to keep it current. I know Councilmember O'Banion has been talking about updating the future land use map for a long time, and I think the effort has been outstanding to get us to this point. As the mayor said, it's rarely perfect, and there will be changes, but we have a much better, more flexible document to use now, and the additional alternatives for mixed use 1 and 2 help us with a lot of rezonings that the council has dealt with, where we were kind of constrained by the plan. It was difficult to make a rezoning decision on that basis. So I think, again, really great effort to the staff and to our help with the consultant. So really, really important document.
And just a reminder, months of planning, outside consultant, multiple committee meetings, public input. We just didn't come up with this overnight. Yeah.
No, in fact, I was reading back through and it looked like, of course, it had been talked about before then, but really since early 2023, did we really start looking at knowing that we needed to update this land use map. And I think to your point, Sam, and thank you for the work you have done. I think it's very good. And it was getting to a point where we were locked in by this land use map that just wasn't making sense. And it was frustrating to not be able to navigate a change that made the right decision for the community. So I appreciate this. I'm excited about the flexibility. I love the secondary uses. If this doesn't work, there's a secondary, there's already built-in flexibility right now that also opens us up for further if we develop to address that as it happens. So I would love, is this going to need a motion for approval? I would love to make a motion to approve the federal.
Nobody wanted to take it from you.
Yeah. Yes.
As presented.
Stephanie has been encouraging us on a regular basis to get that thing going. So we have a motion by Stephanie, a second by Wayne to adopt the future land use map. And again, for those in the audience, in a community, you've got individual property rights, but then you also have community responsibility for those property rights. And so there's a much more tension or close knit. And so somebody has to lead, at least in the vision. And so what this does is at least leads in the vision of what the community could look like. And then it's a dance. And then we take the lead, and then we listen to our private ownership partners to tell us where we really need to go. And that's what really drives it. We just kind of paint the picture based on community development, and then let everyone else take it.
And to your point, it's not something we just this is what we'd like to see. This was driven by what's happening.
Absolutely.
And what may happen in the
Yeah.
future based
Absolutely.
on where we are. So
Yeah, it's a rhythm. It's not a fixed thing. It's a living, breathing organization that will morph and change over time. So,
thank you.
true. All right. We have a motion, a second. Any other comments? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously.
Very exciting.
Yay. We'll
Thank you all very
put
much.
that plaque on the wall. All right. Items 17 and 18 are executive sessions. For anyone who wanted to speak to any council member or staff, we have our emails and phone numbers, I think, on the website. You're welcome to do that. We will be convening into executive session which will have no one in here. We will not be taking any action afterwards. So if anyone wants to take a break, I'll just go ahead and read this in the record for Amy, and we'll come back. So we'll take 5 if y'all want to just take a break. All right, item 17, executive session pursuant to the provision of the Open Meetings Law, Chapter 551, Government Code, Vernon's Texas Code, annotated in accordance with the authority contained in Section 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, and item 18, executive session pursuant to the provision of the Open Meetings Law, Chapter 551, Government Code, Vernon's Texas Code, annotated in accordance with the authority contained in Section 551.071, consultation with attorney. There we go, in the record.
I love him.